On the day of the wedding, everything seems perfect. The bride, Evelyn, is ready to marry the love of her life, Luke, in a beautiful ceremony. But just before the vows are exchanged, Luke mysteriously vanishes. Evelyn is devastated and confused, but the wedding proceeds without him, and the guests assume it was a prank or a misunderstanding. Evelyn begins to search for him everywhere, calling his phone, talking to friends, but no one knows where he went. The missing year's time passes. Evelyn is tormented by her memories of Luke, but has to move on with her life. She becomes a successful architect, and though she dates a few people, none of them fill the void that Luke left behind. Over the years, Evelyn never gives up on finding answers, though the police can't find any trace of him. She often revisits the church where the wedding was supposed to take place, hoping for some sign or message. One day, while working late in her office, Evelyn has a strange encounter. She sees a man standing outside her office building. Someone familiar, but she's not sure who he is. He watches her from the shadows, and when he finally approaches, she realizes he looks exactly like Luke, down to the smallest detail. She is struck with disbelief, but when she approaches him, he seems unfamiliar, almost like a stranger wearing Luke's face. The man, who introduces himself as Theo, explains that he has been looking for her. He says he is a version of Luke who has been trapped in a time loop, forced to repeat the same wedding day over and over. He doesn't remember why or how he became trapped, but every time he tries to change the outcome of that day, he ends up back at the beginning. Evelyn is skeptical but intrigued. Theo's emotions seem so real, and his mannerisms are exactly like Luke's. As they talk, Evelyn and Theo realize they share a strong connection. But the conversation becomes heated as Theo admits that he has already fallen in love with her over the many loops he's experienced. He is desperate to break free of the cycle and begs Evelyn to help him, but she is still hesitant. After all, if he's Luke, then what is the real Luke doing? Where is he? She reluctantly agrees to help, but a part of her fears that Theo may not be Luke at all. Theo reveals the truth. He's been repeating the wedding day for years. The morning begins the same way every time, and no matter what he does, the day always ends the same. Luke disappears on their wedding day, leaving Evelyn alone at the altar. He has tried everything to stop it, but each time, he returns to the same place, as if locked in a cycle. He feels the crushing weight of his own failure and emotional exhaustion. But the moment he finds Evelyn in the new loop, he falls in love with her all over again. Theo takes Evelyn to a small hidden corner of the city, a place he's been visiting each loop. It's an old, abandoned clock tower. Inside, he shows her a journal where he's documented every loop. He explains how every time they reach the end of the day, he wakes up to the same morning over and over again. The journal reveals that in every loop, he tries different approaches, going to the wedding early, leaving her messages, trying to prevent the disappearance. But nothing changes. Each time, Evelyn is left heartbroken, just as she was on that fateful day. Theo attempts to show Evelyn a recording of the day he disappeared. In the video, she watches Luke talk to her at the altar, but as she turns to look, something flickers. Her reflection in the mirror changes, and she sees herself with someone else. The mirror seems to glitch like a distortion in time. Theo explains that these glitches are moments when the time loop almost breaks, but they always reset. Evelyn is shaken by what she sees as she realizes she's been in this loop too, in some way, all along. Evelyn starts to feel the pull of the emotions Theo is expressing. She begins to wonder if the love she feels for him is her love for Luke, or if it's something new entirely. One night, after talking for hours, Theo and Evelyn share a passionate kiss. As they break apart, both of them are struck with a deep sense of confusion. It feels both right and wrong at the same time. Evelyn is torn. Her heart belongs to the memory of Luke. But the man in front of her is real, tangible, and desperate to break free of the endless cycle. As they talk more about the loops, Theo reveals that he remembers something about his past life that he shouldn't. He recalls a conversation with a mysterious figure who told him the only way to break the loop was to make a choice. But the choice Theo faced was not just about him or Evelyn, it was about both of them. He reveals that the real reason Luke disappeared was because he had been given an ultimatum: break free of the loop or live a life of endless repetition. The moment Luke made his decision to escape, he unknowingly doomed Evelyn and Theo to share the loop forever, their love trapped in time. As Evelyn processes everything she's learned, she is faced with a difficult decision. If she continues with Chio and tries to break the loop, there's a chance that she could lose the memory of Luke forever. She may forget the love she shared with him, but she could live a new life with Theo. Or would it be the same endless cycle? Could she ever truly escape this fate, even with a different man? She finds herself questioning whether the relationship she's building with Theo is worth the sacrifice of her past. Evelyn seeks advice from an old woman who wants new Luke. The woman tells Evelyn that every time the loop breaks, it rewrites reality. She warns that if Evelyn continues to play along, she may lose her true identity. The woman urges Evelyn to stop pursuing the loop and let it run its course. But Theo refuses to listen to the advice, believing that their love can free them both. The glitch grows stronger. Evelyn begins to experience strange moments of deja vu and glitches in her surroundings. She sees people she doesn't remember talking to, and events repeat themselves in ways she can't understand. She starts seeing glimpses of Luke in her dreams, but they are fragmented and distorted, as if his essence is being drained from her. The more she tries to hold on to him, the more everything slips through her fingers. Theo makes a promise to Evelyn that if she helps him break the cycle, they will build a new future together, one where they can love each other without the past haunting them. But when they try to leave the clock tower one last time, Theo is pulled back into the loop, while Evelyn is left standing outside, alone. She feels the weight of all their memories collapsing on her, and for a moment, she isn't sure if she's still in the loop or if she's finally broken free. Evelyn's heart shatters when she realizes the truth. She has been trapped in the loop as much as Theo. Every decision she's made, every path she's taken, has been a part of the cycle. The loop is not just about Theo's choices, it's about hers too. In the end, she must decide whether to continue trying to break free and lose herself in the process, or to let go of both men and accept the fate that has been set for her. Evelyn wakes up in the clock tower, unsure of how much time has passed since the loop reset. She is exhausted, feeling trapped in an endless cycle of decisions and emotions. She looks around, unsure whether the surroundings are real or part of the recurring nightmare. When Theo appears, his eyes mirror her pain, as if he's aware of the emotional toll the loop is taking on both of them. They speak, but everything feels disconnected. Theo pleads with her to make the choice, whether they break the cycle together or let time consume them both. The weight of his words begins to sink in, but Evelyn's heart wavers. The stranger's warning returns. Evelyn goes back to visit the old woman who had warned her earlier. The woman now seems more desperate, almost afraid, and tells Evelyn that the clock tower is not just a prison for Theo, it's a place of torment for every person who has loved him. The woman claims that the time loop is not a punishment for Luke, but for Evelyn herself. She is the one bound to the loop, tethered to an idealized version of love that cannot survive in real time. She is trapped in the past, unable to move forward. Evelyn starts to understand that her refusal to let go of Luke is keeping both her and Theo trapped. While grappling with the truth, Evelyn starts to hear Luke's voice in her dreams again. His voice calls to her, promising to return, but it feels distant and fragmented. She begins to question whether Luke's disappearance was his own choice or part of a greater, uncontrollable force, something beyond both him and her. Could he have been trapped in the cycle too, or was his departure a sign of his own freedom? This uncertainty gnaws at Evelyn as she starts questioning her love for Theo and Luke, unsure of who she truly belongs to. In the clock tower, Theo and Evelyn share a tender kiss. but it's different this time. It feels like an echo of all the kisses they have shared across the loops. There's no newness, no excitement, just the suffocating weight of time pressing in on them. Evelyn realizes that their love may be built on a foundation of repeating moments, not a real connection. She pulls away shaking and says she can't continue the cycle anymore. Theo, devastated, pleads with her to stay, to break the loop. But Evelyn knows she has to let go of both him and Luke if she wants to move on with her life. Evelyn faces the hardest decision of her life. Theo asks her one final time to break the cycle with him. He promises that they could build a life together without the ghosts of their past. But Evelyn knows that their love, no matter how deep, is part of the trap. She has to let go of the dream of love she's clung to for so long. With tears in her eyes, she tells Theo she cannot live in the past anymore, and she chooses to break free. The clock tower begins to disintegrate, and time around her seems to stretch and warp. The moment Evelyn makes her choice, the fabric of the time loop begins to tear. The clock tower cracks open, and Evelyn falls to the ground. As she stands up, she finds herself in an unfamiliar place, a quiet park, bathed in golden sunlight. The clock tower is gone. The atmosphere is different, lighter, but she feels lost. She's no longer in the endless cycle, but time has been altered. Has she broken the loop, or has she just slipped into another version of it? A version where she is free from Theo and Luke, but alone with her memories. Evelyn wanders through the park, trying to make sense of what's happening. She realizes she cannot find Theo, and neither can she find Luke. The people in the park are strangers, and they seem to live their lives without her. She tries to call out for Theo, for Luke, but her voice seems to be swallowed by the wind. The echoes of their faces haunt her. She starts to feel as though she never existed in the real world, that she's been abandoned by everyone she's ever loved. Is she still stuck in the loop, or is this the world she's always wanted? A world where she is free of the men who have haunted her, but also alone. In the midst of her confusion, Evelyn hears a familiar voice calling her name. She turns to find Luke standing before her, looking exactly as he did before his disappearance. He tells her that the cycle has finally ended, that he was trapped in it too, and that everything has reset. He explains that he had to let her go for both their sakes, that by disappearing, he was breaking the cycle for good. She realizes that Luke's disappearance was not a betrayal. It was his final act of love for her. He tells her that they can finally live together, free from the loop. Evelyn and Luke talk about everything they've lost and everything they've gained. She begins to feel the weight of the years she spent in confusion, longing for something she could never have. But as she listens to Luke, she realizes that the love she had for him was never truly hers. It was something born of the past, of memories that couldn't live up to reality. Luke too has changed. He's not the man she once loved, and the love between them doesn't feel the same anymore. They are both strangers now, and Evelyn is left to wonder if freedom from the loop was worth the cost of losing everything she once held dear. Luke walks away, and Evelyn watches him disappear into the horizon. For the first time, she realizes that the love she had for him was just a shadow of something that could never exist in the real world. She is finally free, but she also feels the emptiness of her heart. As she stands alone, Evelyn understands that love, true love, requires both the past and the future, not just a stagnant memory. She chooses to walk forward into a new life, leaving behind the ghosts of the time loop and the echoes of a love that never had a chance. Evelyn begins her life anew, moving to a different city and starting over as an architect. For the first time in years, she feels a sense of freedom. She meets new people, and though she feels a pang of sadness for what she's lost, she is able to move on with her life. She meets a kind, attentive man who reminds her of the love she once had. But this time, it's different. She no longer clings to memories of Luke or Theo. The memory of Theo. One evening, while walking home, Evelyn spots a man in the distance who looks vaguely familiar. It's Theo, looking more like the man she once knew. She approaches him, but as they talk, she realizes he's not the same. He is just another stranger now, a part of her past that cannot return. She realizes that, just like Luke, Theo was a figment of her past, someone who existed only in the loops they were trapped in. The reflection. Evelyn finds a moment of peace as she looks into a mirror and realizes that she is no longer haunted by the past. She can finally see herself for who she truly is, without the distortions of memory or time. For the first time in years, she feels a sense of wholeness, not as someone defined by past loves, but as a person ready to embrace whatever comes next. As time passes, Evelyn occasionally sees glimpses of Luke and Theo in her dreams, but they are no longer the central focus of her life. Instead, she accepts that they were part of her journey, but not the destination. She has learned that love is not about holding on to the past, but about moving forward with an open heart. The final scene shows Evelyn standing at the edge of a cliff, looking out over a vast ocean. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of gold and pink. She closes her eyes, letting the wind wash over her, and finally lets go of the memories that have held her captive for so long. She is free. Evelyn begins to settle into her new life. She wakes up every morning with a sense of purpose, working on her architectural projects and spending time with her new friends. Though she is no longer haunted by the memories of Luke and Theo in the same way, there are days when she catches herself staring out of the window, lost in thoughts, as if waiting for something that no longer exists. Her new life is filled with routines, going to work, meeting colleagues, attending social gatherings. She begins to build new connections, but there's a lingering emptiness. She's not looking for love, but a part of her still craves the intensity she once had, the passion that defined her relationships in the loop. The ghost of the past. One day, while walking through the city, Evelyn sees an old familiar face in the crowd, a man who looks just like Theo. Her heart skips a beat, and for a moment, everything around her seems to freeze. She rushes toward him, but when she reaches out, the man turns around to reveal a different face, a stranger. The encounter leaves Evelyn shaken. Was it a mere coincidence, or is the loop still trying to pull her back? She begins to wonder whether it's possible to truly break free from the grip of the past. Evelyn spends the evening reflecting on Theo, recalling his desperation and passion, the way he made her feel like everything was possible. She feels a pang of regret. If only things had been different. She reaches out to an old friend who had known Theo, trying to gather pieces of his life, but the conversation leaves her with more questions than answers. Her friend reveals that Theo had disappeared shortly after the time loop was broken, and no one had seen him since. Evelyn is left wondering whether Theo's disappearance was another result of the loop, or if he too was trying to move on, just as she had. The later one evening, while going through some old belongings, Evelyn finds a letter she had written to herself before she even knew the truth about the time loop. The letter speaks of her fears and dreams, a desire to find closure with Luke and Theo. As she reads the letter, Evelyn realizes how much she has changed. She no longer feels the weight of the past defining her future. The letter symbolizes a turning point for her. She is no longer haunted by the choices she made. Instead, she begins to see herself as someone who is capable of moving forward and carving her own path, independent of the men who once dominated her world. One day, Evelyn receives a phone call from a number she doesn't recognize. It's a voice she immediately recognizes. It's Luke. Her heart races, but she quickly realizes that it's not the same version of him she once knew. This Luke sounds different, more distant, and less certain. He tells her that he has spent years trying to make sense of the time loop, and that he finally found a way to reach her. Luke explains that they are both free now, but their connection was always going to be temporary. The moment they both broke free from the loop, they began to change. He tells her that their love was real, but it was never meant to last forever. Evelyn hangs up the phone, feeling a bittersweet sense of closure. As time passes, Evelyn opens herself up to the possibility of love again. She meets Julian, a kind and thoughtful man who shares her passion for architecture. They connect deeply over their shared interests, but Evelyn still carries the weight of her past experiences with Luke and Theo. Julian, unaware of her past, makes her feel seen and valued in ways that the men from her past never could. Evelyn is torn between her growing feelings for Julian and the haunting memory of her time with Theo and Luke. But with Julian, there is no time loop, no manipulative forces, just the potential for something real. Confronting the fear one evening, while walking through the city with Julian, Evelyn experiences a panic attack. She becomes overwhelmed by the fear that she might lose him in the same way she lost the men from her past. Julian notices her distress and gently reassures her that they're in control of their own future, that time is not something they need to fear. This moment becomes a turning point for Evelyn. She realizes that the love she shared with Luke and Theo was rooted in the past, in a time that no longer exists. Julian, in contrast, offers her something she never thought she would have again: the chance to build a future, not haunted by the shadows of the past. Evelyn visits the clock tower once more, this time with a sense of finality. She stands there, taking in the place that has been both a prison and a source of liberation. She remembers Theo, remembers Luke, but now she feels no urge to return to the cycle. The memories are faded, like old photographs, and she knows that her future is no longer tied to the past. She whispers a final goodbye to the place and walks away, finally free from the ghosts of the loop. The test Evelyn's relationship with Julian deepens, and for the first time since the loop broke, she feels as if she is truly moving on. But one day, Julian asks her a question that makes her pause. Do you think you'll ever truly let go of your past? Evelyn doesn't answer immediately, but her heart tells her the truth. She is finally ready to let go, not because of the circumstances, but because she's found someone who doesn't represent the cycle of time. She realizes that in order to move forward with Julian, she needs to make the choice to live fully in the present. It's a test of her own growth, a final step in her journey to freedom. Evelyn and Julian walk into the future together, hand in hand, with no shadows of the past looming over them. Evelyn has let go of the emotional chains that once held her captive, and she is ready to embrace the love and life that she deserves. The future is uncertain, but for the first time, it's her future, one that she can shape without the constraints of time or regrets. Evelyn receives an invitation to a memorial for those who were lost in the loop. She decides to attend, not out of a sense of obligation, but because she feels it's time to acknowledge the past. At the memorial, she meets others who were affected by the time loop, some who were trapped with her, others who were left behind. For the first time, Evelyn feels no bitterness, no anger. She feels an overwhelming sense of peace. She's free. The weight that once burdened her heart is lifted, and she can finally accept what happened without fear. Revisiting old haunts, Evelyn visits her old home, the place where her life and love with Luke began. It's strange, almost unrecognizable. She walks through the rooms, touching old furniture, remembering moments from her life with him. Yet, nothing feels the same. The house is no longer hers. It's a relic of a past life. In that moment, she realizes that she has outgrown the woman she was when she lived there. That woman was trapped in the cycle. This new Evelyn is someone who has embraced her future, unburdened by the need to hold on to the past. Evelyn is invited to speak at a global architecture conference where her work is recognized for its groundbreaking designs. As she stands before a packed auditorium, she feels empowered. She speaks about resilience, about breaking free from the cycles we create in our own minds, and the importance of moving forward. Her speech resonates deeply with the audience, and Evelyn realizes that her work, both in architecture and in life, has the power to inspire others. A moment of clarity. One night after a long day of work, Evelyn sits on her balcony with Julian, looking out at the city. She has come so far, and in that moment, she feels an overwhelming sense of clarity. She has lived a lifetime of love, pain, and loss, but now she is living for herself. Julian leans over and kisses her, and for the first time, Evelyn feels as though she is exactly where she is meant to be. Evelyn and Julian take a trip to the ocean, a place she's always wanted to visit. As they walk along the shore, Evelyn watches the waves crash against the rocks. The sound is soothing, and she closes her eyes, letting the salt air cleanse her spirit. She knows that her past will always be a part of her, but it no longer defines her. She smiles to herself, ready for whatever comes next. Evelyn and Julian decide to get married. It's a quiet ceremony surrounded by close friends and family. This time, Evelyn knows the love she shares with Julian is not a repeat of the past. It is a new beginning, a love built on trust, understanding, and freedom. The dance. At their wedding reception, Evelyn and Julian share their first dance as a married couple. Evelyn holds him close, and for the first time, she feels completely at peace. There is no time loop, no unfinished business. She is free to live in the present with the person she loves. As Evelyn looks at the life she has built, she reflects on the journey that brought her here. The pain, the loss, the confusion, all of it was part of her story. But now she stands at the edge of something new, something real. Evelyn and Julian begin their life together, building a home, making memories, and facing the future without fear. She has learned to embrace time, not as a cycle that traps her, but as a gift. The final scene shows Evelyn and Julian walking into their future together, hand in hand, as the sun sets behind them. The past is behind her, and the future is wide open, full of possibilities. Evelyn is no longer defined by the loop. She is defined by her own choices, her own love, and the life she is ready to create.